In this video, we're going to check for a clear gun, field strip the firearm, lubricate, reassemble, and rock and roll. All right, first we're going to check for an empty chamber. For that, we're going to take it off safe. You cannot charge the gun with the safety on. Take off safe, pull the bolt carrier all the way to the rear, and now we're going to look for an empty chamber. We're going to look, turn away, look again for an empty chamber, and then we're going to feel that there's nothing in the chamber. This technique works when it's light and when it's night. Having shown that we're clear, we're going to depress the recoil spring. We're going to make a C shape with our hand and lift up on the dust carrier, or dust cover. You might need to wiggle just a little bit and just pull it up and back. Then we're going to push in the recoil spring till it clears this channel right here. Sometimes we can turn to the side to get it a little more clear, retract it to the rear as well. Then grab the charging handle, pull it to the rear, and it'll usually eject on its own. Pull backwards and out. We can now take the bolt and push it to the rear while rotating clockwise from our perspective. Rotate that triangle cam so that it's facing up if the bolt carrier is upside down, and push away from you. It'll come out. At this point, we can lubricate the gun. Just about any lubricant will work great in keeping the AK well maintained. All that matters is that it's wet. It doesn't need to be particularly clean. So, using our Occam Lube syringe here, I'm going to put a small amount around the edges of this triangular lug and on the two locking lug surfaces. So these surfaces right here. Basically, everywhere that's bright on the bolt that's not on the bolt face. Because lubricants spoil primers, we don't want to get anything up here dirty. Or oily. I like to put a good amount into one of these channels here, and then a small amount, and by good amount I mean sort of semi-fill it with lubricant, and then put a small amount here on the bolt stem itself and wipe it along. Okay, so to recap, triangle on the bolt, triangle lug, back of the two locking lugs, if you want a little bit on the sides where it's bright and on the bottom where it's bright. Put a little reservoir here of lube to get out later, and then wipe the stem down. On the bolt carrier, we're going to go, this is where the triangle lug cams over. It's what screws the bolt in. We're just going to go around these corners right here. We're also going to squirt some in this slot here on the left and right side. This is the left side, and then the right side. I'm using an Occam Lube white here. If you do want the highest performance lube, Occam Lube black is a higher performance lubricant. On the firearm itself, we want to just lubricate the rails. So you can see down in here, there's a bead of white. Just squirt a fat bead down in that little crack there. Likewise, on the right side, another bead down in there. You can also smear a little bit on the flat parts of these rails. You don't really need to get these upper rails because the lube that we squirted into the rails of the bolt carrier will lube them. Okay, that's everywhere where I put grease on an AK. I use light machine oil for the fire control group. Now we're going to grab the bolt and the bolt carrier. We're going to turn the bolt carrier upside down, face the locking, the triangle lug up, push it all the way to the rear. Rotate it counterclockwise from your perspective and push it forward. It's important to push it all the way forward so that we can get it back into the gun. Now we're going to flip this over here, this assembly, and we're going to slide the gas piston into its home above the barrel. Now I'm going to push firmly down in the rear. See this cutout in the rails? That's where the rear of the bolt carrier goes in. You're going to have to push down to compress the hammer a little bit. Then after it gets over the hump of the hammer, it should slide freely. If you catch it, if it feels like it's binding when you start to put it in, check where your bolt is. It's likely that the bolt isn't flat, it's cocked. If that happens, just pull it to the rear and don't try and gorilla it home because you'll just make it more stuck. Come back out, rotate that bolt dead flat, push firmly down, slide forward. Next, grab your recoil spring, tow it into the hole that's in the rear of the bolt carrier, just above that horn that's sticking out. It'll start to load right about here. We're going to push it just far enough so that the rear of the recoil spring slides into this sort of valley here. Now we're going to take our dust cover, and with the Merc handguard, with the standard AK, you just tow the front in to there's sort of a hoop for it to go into, like a rainbow, and then push it down, give it a smack with the heel of your palm. With the Merc, you're going to need a special gesture here. You're going to grab it like this. So your pointer and middle finger on the right side of the dust cover, your thumb on the left edge there, and then the heel of your palm is going to be resting against the back of the dust cover, right there. Now it helps to cant it just a little bit so you can see. You're going to slide it forward and then lift sharply up with your fingers and push down with the palm of your hand, and it'll wiggle into the, the rainbow cutout, circular cutout up in the upper clamp there. And then I'm just going to push down with my heel, and it'll click right in. Occasionally it needs a little swat on the butt there to find home. The last thing we're going to do when we've disassembled and reassembled any part of our gun is to function check it for safe operation. What I'm going to do here is just run the bolt back and forth and make sure that it feels as normal and isn't binding, or that something's not off. That sounds sweet. We are now completed with our field strip, clean, and reassembly.